What's up, guys? Welcome to Powerline Podcast. My name is Ryan Lucas. I am your host. Thanks for joining me. If you're a longtime listener, I appreciate you guys. If this is your first time here, first time listening or watching, whatever, welcome. I hope you get some value out of these episodes. Today's episode, I sit down with Matt Compher. Matt is the Vice President of Safety, Health, and Environmental for Quanta Services. When you get to sit down with these guys, you get to see like a very big overall picture of the direction of the industry. It's not, you don't often get this as the guy on the end of the shovel, down at the front lines, doing the work in the dirt. You don't get to see like what direction the industry is thinking of going and pushing their efforts towards. That's why these convos are so important and so much value in them. So yeah, sit down with Matt Compher. We go through what the capacity model is and things like what direction an organization like Quanta Services is headed. So yeah, it's awesome. Let's jump right in. Matt, welcome to Powerline Podcast. I swear it's been a long time. Like, I first told you about this podcast back when I was with Alltech.
That's right.
And you said, yeah, let's do it. He's like, I think you said, I believe it was, safety should be your first podcast.
Yeah, and now we're getting to it.
And now we're getting to it. So
no, you talk about safety other times too.
Yeah. No, it's a core. It's obviously a core. Passionate about helping these guys come home every day, guys and girls come home every day. But welcome to Powerline Podcast. It's awesome to have you here.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here. As you said, we were in Vancouver. What was it, 5-6 years ago when we first had this conversation? So glad to see it finally come around.
I think I got it on the calendar back then, and it's fun.
We finally got here. So.
Okay, I want to start from the beginning, just lay out for everybody kind of who you are, where you're from, that sort of thing. So like, where do you come from?
Yeah, so born and raised in Southern Ohio. Grew up on a small farm. My mom was a teacher. My father worked at the paper mill. Very blue-collar family. Raised in the local church. My great-grandparents mortgaged their house to build the church that sits on my family's farm today. You go back there and, I go to a Sunday, not as often as I need to. And I'm still related to half the people in the church and went to high school, or half of them are my teachers or whatever. So real small town school, had 74 people in my high school graduating class, and just kind of a small town, feeling.
I grew up in a small town as well. I know what the small graduation class is like. I think mine was like 14.
I'm a little bit bigger than that, but still pretty small.
Where in Ohio?
Southern Ohio, Chillicothe. When we went to town, we went to Chillicothe, so halfway between Columbus and the river.
What's growing up in Ohio like?
It's blue collar. It's hard work. It's a lot of good people doing a lot of good things. Growing up in the church, we were always helping people out. Community projects, those kind of things. So it was a family, tight-knit family, high school football, those kind of things. Very active in the school, the community, the football team. When a football game's going on, everybody's there, so those
Did you play football?
Yes, I did.
How far along did you get?
Just through high school.
Okay.
Yeah. I wasn't that good at it, but I enjoyed playing.
I feel like Ohio is like a real football state. I don't know much, but sorry, a dumb Canadian. It's all ice hockey for me. But
yeah, I don't know much about ice hockey, but football we got into.
Hey, you guys just won World Juniors.
Yeah. Really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
I don't think anybody does.
I don't even know what World Juniors is. So. Sounds cool, though.
You said your dad was paper mill.
Mm-hmm.
That's where the blue collar in you comes from?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, growing up in the community, it was a paper mill town. You were a logger.
Sure.
You were a farmer, or you worked at the paper mill. I remember being in high school, and our goal was to get in the paper mill. You could make $35,000, $40,000, afford a couple of acres, and hunt and fish all the time, and that's what I was into.
Do you still get out hunting and fishing?
Not as much as I like to. I do some fishing now. I haven't hunted in several years.
Sweet. Yeah. How did you get into the trade specifically?
Yeah. So I think when you say the trade, I'll talk to you how I got in the safety profession,
Sure.
and then I'll bring us into how I got into this particular trade.
For sure.
I went to work right out of high school. There was a small steel mill in town, and I went to work in the steel mill, and this was the early 90s. And I would say it was probably ran like it was in the 50s and 60s, and all my buddies were getting hurt. I didn't really understand it. We usually care about people, and seemingly there was a lot of safety incidents that were happening. And so I started getting active in the United Steelworkers at the time, started going to union meetings. I got elected as a United Steelworkers Safety Committeeman. I ran unopposed, but got elected and began working on safety at an early age. I was 20 years old and really dove into safety, reading books and really trying to figure out how we're going to protect our people at that plant.
That seems like I don't know, just putting myself back at 20 years old, safety wasn't necessarily what I was like, wasn't top of mind. Like, what was the specific trigger? Like you say, friends were getting hurt.
Yeah.
Like, what kind of severity of hurt?
Well, I didn't know how to spell safety either.
Sure.
But I think if you look back at my history, my parents really ingrained in me, and coming up in my home life was, let's help people out. So I was like, my buddies are getting hurt. I had a particular friend that did the same job I did that, amputated 3 fingers, and like, how is this possible? He was 21 years old. He's a little bit older than me at the time. Those fingers aren't going to grow back. No. Right. And how can we really get in here? I remember one night in particular, I was cleaning out a quench oil tank, and that story is long, but I was in this quench oil tank in a very tight spot, laying on a sprocket with a handle of a shovel sawed off so I could shovel scale out of this tank to clean the tank. And it was 2:00 in the morning, and I was sitting there thinking, well, I hope nobody turns this conveyor belt on. And it kind of triggered me. So I climbed out, and, all of my buddies were getting hurt. This event happened to me. I'm like, we got to do better than this. So I just started reading, and I figured out how to spell safety and started reading a lot of books and really dove into it.
What did safety programs, if at all, look like then?
They told us to be safe. They'd have a new hire orientation, said wear your PPE. And that was pretty much it. No lockout, tag out at the time, any of that stuff. It was just be careful.
So what did the progression look like then from like safety in a steel mill to what it looks like now? What did your progression look like?
Yeah, well, now we're really getting advanced. We understand that, with the capacity model, that we only employ human beings and we're going to make mistakes, and really understanding how to put controls or barriers in place between us and energy. So you go from absolutely nothing, and then you fast forward to you get to rules-based safety. And that's kind of where we were for 20 years, and I was for 20 years. Like, let's write a new rule and try to figure out how we can protect people by legislating failure out of work, which I'm not sure you can do, right? And then you fast forward from rules-based safety to behavioral-based safety. That was, I'd say early 2000s. We got into behavioral-based safety, and we really started saying, all right, so how can we fix the employee? I'm not sure you can fix a human being. You might be able to influence them, but
that's tough.
Fix a human being.
Especially on an individual level.
Yeah, right. It'd take a long time to fix me. So you go no safety, compliance or rules-based safety to behavioral-based safety, and now we're into this, what we call human and organizational performance safety.
Explain behavioral-based safety a little bit more, because I know that that's something I've talked about lots, because that's what I understood was the way to change your behavior. You change your safety culture, your even individual safety culture or group safety culture. Yeah. Explain that a little bit.
Well, look, you can influence behavior, but you're never going to absolutely control a human being's behavior, right? There's going to be errors. There's going to be mistakes. What we have to decide is, are we going to prepare for that, or are we going to expect perfection? We know we only employ human beings, so we have to build in that capacity for errors and mistakes so we can have that release of energy without changing somebody's life. So we're not accepting, like, we're still talking about, rules. We're still complying with the law. We're trying not to ride anymore, but we're still complying with the law. We're still talking about bending at the knees, wearing your safety glasses, those kind of things. But we understand that we're going to make a mistake, that we're going to screw it up. And if we screw up when high energy is present, that energy is going to be released, and we need to be able to absorb it without changing a life.
So before I dive into the capacity model, because that's a bunch of stuff I really want to dive into and talk about, why are people important?
They're the core of our business. But besides that, they're human beings. We care for people. At the core of all human beings, I believe, are really good people trying to do good work. And we owe it to them to protect them.
Why do the trades matter?
I mean, it's really the heartbeat of Quanta, but I think it's the heartbeat of America. It's what drives our economy. It's what drives, not only U.S., you being from Canada, it drives North America. Yeah. It really drives the world. It's the men and women out there doing the work each and every day that are building the roads, the power lines, the pipelines, all the things that we enjoy.
I like to ask that question to each and every person because I like each and every person's response to that question. And they're all slightly different, but it's important, I think, to keep bringing it up. It's like when somebody passes, they say like the last time they're remembered is the last time they're ever spoken about. So I want to continually bring up the trades. I don't want it to be forgotten or not spoken about. I want it to be like the highlight. And it's important to me. It's important to a lot of people, I think. And I think a lot of people just forget that.
Yeah, it's extremely important to me. I'm passionate about it. I've dedicated my professional career to protecting the men and women in the trades. I'm not a lineman. I don't proclaim to be, but I've been a part of a lot of line projects. And I have that same pride when I drive underneath that power line. I remember going through West Virginia, the first power line I ever built, on vacation with my family, saying I was part of that line. Yeah. It's pretty cool. It's just something I'll remember forever.
I think it's like that with the thing is a lot of trades can't see what their work produced, right? A plumber doesn't get to see what they made because it's inside a wall, or a welder very rarely gets to see his weld. But I think they all, when they drive by that spot where they did that weld on that pipe and it was like the best weld they've ever done, they're like, I got a memory to that.
And some of the best people I've ever met in the world are in the trades. Yeah. Just good people.
Yeah. I got this. I want to talk about safety and taking safety home with you for a second. This rad story the other day. I've had this guy on the podcast a couple of times. His name's Bryce Hubbard. And Bryce shot me a text. It was a little over a month ago. And he's like, hey, I got a great story for you. He's like, I brought a 2-year-old back to life today. And I'm like, what? He's like, yeah. He's like, this is a great example of like taking safety home with you, right? And take what you learn at work home with you. He's like, had this situation, kid in the pool, got him out, brought him back. And the only way I could do that was because I paid attention in all those classes I had at work. Instead of putting my feet up and getting on my phone in the back of the class, I actually did the work in the class, and I was able to take safety home with me, and it saved a 2-year-old's life. And I just thought that you talk about people and you talk about safety, and a lot of people sit in the back of the class with their feet up, not paying attention, putting in their 8 hours paid time.
That's right.
And just go do their job. But just wanted your take on that.
Yeah, well, one, it's a great story, right? And we hear those stories from time to time across Quanta. But I think what we're really trying to do at Quanta is we're not building check-the-box training. We're investing in our people. We want our people to use these skills everywhere. Obviously, with our AED program, we've seen 43 lives saved with the AED program.
Yeah, talk about that program a little bit.
Yeah, so we have around 17,000 AEDs deployed across the Quanta system. Our goal is to have one in every supervisor's vehicle, and we've had 43 saves, 43 families that didn't get destroyed, right? 43 fathers that returned home or mothers that returned home because of the AED program. And not just the AED program. The AED doesn't deploy itself. Our employees had to take action at a time of need, which is really cool, and just awesome stories out there around the AED program.
I actually had I think a guy, it was a direct message on Instagram. He was like, hey, Ryan, I got a question for you around AEDs. He's like, he didn't work for a Quanta company. I'm not sure what company he worked for, regardless. But he said, should we be seeing AEDs on our foreman's trucks at least? And I was like, dude, like a lot of companies are really implementing these AED programs, and yeah, you should have them available at least, like at minimum, like have them nearby, around, or with you on job sites. He's like, oh, I need to look into that because our organization doesn't do that, and it kind of like blew me away because the AED program has been in for a while now with Quanta, and so it kind of like blew my mind that people still are going without access to like a life-saving device like that.
Yeah, you still see it across the industry. I mean, it's gaining momentum. We actually just got it written into the OSHA strategic partnership, where the partners are going to start looking at putting AEDs in all the industry's trucks. So I'm looking forward to see the progress on that. But it's such a great program. And shout out to Duke Austin, our CEO. This was his vision long before Matt arrived. I get the privilege of managing the program now, but this is Duke caring about people.
Do you have a recollection of a story from the AED program you could talk about?
That's a great question. There's been a lot of stories. I'm trying to think of a good one to pull out, but the stories of the public saves where our employees, somebody comes out of the house. Recently, somebody came out of the house and our employees heard somebody screaming and say, I need help. They grab the AED, go in the home, apply the pads, and end up shocking the employee or the member of the public and bringing them back. A really good story from Longfellow. One of our foremen at Longfellow had a AED at home. It was on a weekend. His father went down in the local town where they lived. He got a phone call. He went downtown. His father's laying in this parking lot. Somebody's doing CPR. Paramedic was there, and he got the AED out of his truck and brought his father back. And it's just such a great story to hear his father talk about it and see this employee's kids and the father's grandkids all coming together to share this story. I mean, there's just some truly amazing stories out there.
No kidding. What else is Quanta doing to affect safety culture?
Well, it's investing in people from Lazy Q. What a great facility and training that you can get out there. It's the investment in Northwest Lyman College. It's crew leadership training. It's the capacity model. It's really given our employees the tools they need to be successful.
Explain the capacity model.
So the capacity model, it's really a simple model. It's understanding what's sticky, and I think we all know what sticky is at this point. It's the shit that kills you, STKY, right? Or the stuff that kills you, depending what word you want to use. But it's identifying sticky. It's asking the question when something happens, because we go through a paradigm shift. It's not if, it's when failure happens. When something happens, what's going to protect me and my crew? And then is that enough? And if we get those questions right each and every day, we're all going to come home. We might have been tired. We might have twisted our knee getting out of the truck. I hope not. But if we get the sticky discussion right each and every day, we're all going to come home. And that's the basis of the capacity model.
Where was this birthed? How'd you come up with this, or how was it created?
Yeah, it's a great question. So, I've been doing safety for 25 years now, and I'm a traditional safety professional. We look at lagging indicators, and if last month we have hand injuries, we shift all of our focus to hand injuries. Next month or next quarter, we have soft tissue injuries, so we start putting a stretch and flex program in and all those things, and it had an effect, right? You could say our numbers are best in class, some call world class. I'm not sure what that means, but they're good numbers. I'll put our numbers up against anybody's. But we would get to the end of a quarter or a year and be real proud of ourselves, and seemingly the next day we'd have a life-threatening, life-altering, or even a life-ending event within Quanta, and we're like, but our numbers are good. What's going on here? So I really stepped back, and I went to work researching. I got with all the thought leaders that I could find in the space. I read the books. If somebody said human performance or human operational performance, or there's some other buzzwords like safety differently or safety 2.0 that you might hear out there, if they were saying that publicly, I was calling them, and I was on an airplane and sitting down with them. At the time, we were hoping we could find a system or a program or an initiative that we could take, bring to Quanta and say, all right, here it is. We're going to fix this, right? Kind of maybe the silver bullet syndrome a little bit. What we found out was it really didn't exist. We found people that were measuring safety differently, that might have been talking really at a management level about safety differently. But we didn't see anybody that was really giving tools to the field that we thought was going to help safety differently. They were maybe trying to reduce errors, but not understanding that errors were still going to happen, right? So we came back and said, all right, after a year, I spent probably 12, 13 months, really, not just me, my team, several people that work on this, diving into this. We came back and said, all right, we got to just start writing it ourselves. So we teamed up with the curriculum department at Northwest Lyman College, and we honestly started on a whiteboard in the office of writing down the elements that we thought were needed in there. And we wanted to do something that started with the field level employees, that we wanted to give a tool to the men and women doing the work that was simplified. I call it consumable, not dumbed down, consumable.
Yeah.
Right.
Thanks for that.
Our men and women are extremely competent and extremely intelligent. This isn't to layer on.
Yeah.
This is to make it consumable at the frontline level, give them a tool that's going to make a difference. And that's what we set off to do. And that's kind of how we got started.
I can appreciate that because I've got some underlying learning disabilities or whatever you want to call it, learning struggles. I don't read fast, slight dyslexic, those sorts of things, right? And, maybe some ADD in there as well. You sprinkle all that in there, but that's a large population of what... Yeah. That's what makes us out in the field. And if you took a good survey out in the field, I would bet, if you haven't already, I would bet that a lot of people out there are just like that. Fantastic. We can learn. We can adapt. Yeah. We're smart, but you have to make it simpler and consumable. Like you said, I like that.
Yeah. The consumability is what we focus on. A couple of things to that story, how we got started, Duke really challenged me. We're leaders in this industry in a lot of areas. And quite honestly, you go back, 6-7 years ago, we probably weren't leading where we needed to be in safety. And he really challenged me and collectively all of us to really go after this and figure out how we were going to lead in safety. So that was a big thought change from our leadership to, hey, how can we really go after these major, what we call sticky events? The industry will call a SIF event, but we really got to go after them. So that was a big driver there. But the other thing that we were driving towards is we didn't want to add more work, another form. We didn't want to add, safety professionals are really good about post-event layering on another form or another process or another rule. We wanted to step away from that and make everything that we did consumable and give them a tool immediately that they could use to help them build capacity or help them identify sticky. And when you get the term sticky, it doesn't take a lot of training to understand sticky. When I say sticky, kind of understand what we're talking about, right?
Totally.
And it immediately changes our conversation, whether you're doing a job briefing or you're stopping by to do a crew visit. If the first thing you talk to that foreman about is what's sticky on this task, immediately we're having a rich conversation. And that's what's really important.
Yeah. Yeah, it's almost like, it's not almost like it. It is like once you start talking about those things, all that other stuff, like the stuff where you may not lose a digit or a finger, you're going to cover those if you've covered, I guess you call them, is that your sticky actuals? Is that what you're talking about? Like those actual things that are life-altering, life-threatening?
Yeah, sticky actual is an event. So we had a release of energy that changed somebody's life or maybe, unfortunately, ended somebody's life. That's a sticky actual event.
Okay. When you're putting this all together and like you said, you're just throwing stuff up on a whiteboard, what was the feeling like when it started to take shape and take form and you could actually see something?
Yeah.
Because I imagine your first dozens of sessions, probably would have just been scribbles everywhere. And how's this actually going to come together?
Yeah. Well, I'm a safety geek, just so you know that. Like,
Sure.
I've dedicated my career to be a safety professional, and I geek out about some of this stuff.
Yeah.
So I can tell you I was pretty excited when we had this vision, and when it started forming up, it really felt like we were going somewhere. I think one of the big milestones was when we coined the term sticky. So I'll tell that story real quick. So this was 6 years ago, probably. I was having a staff meeting, so all the people at the time that worked for me, we were sitting around the table and we were setting out the business plan for the next year, talking about what we were wanting to work on, and we were talking about hand injuries and all this frequency type stuff, and how we were going to get better. And we had an event during the meeting, and I don't remember today exactly what the event was, but I stepped out of the meeting to take the phone call, went out, talked to people we were managing the event, and it was a bad one. And I was disturbed and mad and all the things you can imagine, all those emotions that go through you when you have a bad event. And one of our brothers and sisters, got injured. I walked back in the room and I, threw my phone down on the desk and said, we got to start working on the shit that kills us. And that's all I said. And I was frustrated. And I don't know if you ever knew James McGowan.
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
Yeah. James McGowan, Bears, the industry knows him.
Yeah.
He worked for me at the time, and he was
amazing guy.
Amazing guy. He changed.
I took his grounding
training.
class.
Yeah.
Way back. Yeah.
Phenomenal trainer, passionate. He was kind of grumpy in his later years as well. Yeah. So he was sitting over.
Hilarious.
He was sitting off to my left-hand side, and I remember this clear as day, and he was doodling. I thought he was doodling, not paying attention, right, whatever, and then, we had moved on, and probably 45 minutes later, he says sticky, just interrupts the entire meeting and says sticky. I was like, James, what are you talking about? He said sticky, STKY, shit that kills you. That's what we got to work on. And that's how the term got coined right there.
That's literally like a movie. Like you see in the movies.
I remember it clear as day when it happened. And he is the first one I said the words, but I never put an acronym to it. He's the first one that coined it, and he gets all the credit. I would say this too, like, we've had some success with the capacity model. Like, it's gained some traction, not only within Quanta, but across some industries. If we hadn't coined that term that made it that consumable, we would have never been this successful. The words we use matter, and if we focus on consumability, we can make a difference.
So let's pull that thread a little bit more. What are some lessons then, like make communication consumable for the person listening out there right now? How do you make communication better? I've heard this in a lot of organizations I've been a part of, as well as I just heard around the industry, like, oh, we're terrible at communicating. We need to communicate better. Yeah. This is what you hear. Like, what are some good ways to communicate?
Yeah, well, I think there's a lack of communication that I might not address here, but communicate better means, one, we're tradespeople, we're construction men and women. I like cranes and big trucks, and I also like construction drawings and pictures, right? So short, consumable messages. If it's written in safety speak, it's not going to do us any good, right? We shouldn't be writing a message to impress a client, to impress a government regulator, to impress a peer in the safety profession. We should be writing communications that's geared toward the men and women that are going to use it, right? It can't be more than a page. If we get more than a page, they don't have time. They're up going to work. They're looking at units. They're talking to the client in the morning. They got to do a job briefing. Yeah. Somebody didn't show up to work today. How am I going to adjust my crew? They have so many stimuli coming at them at 6:30, 7 in the morning when they're trying to get to work. To lay another piece of bureaucracy on top of them and think it's going to make a difference doesn't make any sense to me. So we really try to focus on that. And we don't always get it right. We still focus on it, but we work hard. I think that's different than a lack of communication. Sometimes we're just not talking enough.
No, but it is a form of lack of communication. I guess what I was getting at was like that's a great example of what I was trying to get at was like, what's a piece of advice for somebody to be able to communicate better? And it's like, keep it simple.
Keep it simple. Right? Don't think an email is a communication either. right? Like we like human,
1000%.
we still need human interaction.
Yeah.
Right. Some people will argue that text message is better. After so many text messages, I don't think that's communication either.
No.
Like I want to talk to somebody. I want to shake somebody's hand.
I think this is why I heard Rogan talking about this on his pod the other day, actually talking about memes. And that's why meme culture is so great, because it's like very easily consumed, very easy to digest. You don't know who made it. So it's like, you can't just like pin it on somebody as like, you said this, or you're this, or you're that, because it's just something that was created and went out into the world, and the market shows whether it caught fire or not. But the thing is it's consumable, and it doesn't have to be amazing. I see this in a lot of times in social media and media in general. It's like, are we going to spend hundreds of thousands of billions of dollars on this big production? I like to say, why? When you could create a meme to say the same thing that took 5 minutes and no dollars. Not always, but like that's kind of the thing, right? Just make it digestible, make it consumable.
And I also think it's important when we're communicating, whether it's a change in work practice or something I don't want to say a new rule, but something that we're re-communicating out there, that we talk to the people that actually do the work before we create it. Right? Because some of us used to do the work, some of the people in the department used to do the work, but most of the people that are in this office that used to do the work, it's been a season or two, right? So let's go talk to the people that are doing the work today. They're the ones that have the answers. They're the smartest ones in the room. I don't think we engage them enough.
Yeah. What's your suggestion on how to engage them then? Or how are you training your trainers then, or the people that are responsible to you to go talk to these people every day? And like, what kind of things are you looking for feedback on? Yeah.
What's working, and more importantly, what doesn't work, right? What struggles are you having? We call it the black line, blue line. As we sit here in this office today and we think about what's going on out there building the power line, it's a nice, cool day, but it's not too cold. There's no ice. There's no mud. Everything's perfect. That's what we call the black line. What's really going on? There's always twists and turns, right? We had snow. We had kids are out of school today. So now I got kids in my work zone playing football in the street. All this stuff's going on. That's the blue line. What we really want to understand is how work actually takes place and learn from that. That's our focus each and every day.
Before this started, we were talking a little bit about professionalism. I think this is a good spot to talk about that. What are you looking for out of your safety professionals, and what's your advice for other safety professionals?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's something I'm pretty passionate about. Like, this is a profession, right? We're past the days that somebody's in this role because they're the one got hurt. We're a resource. We're a service. My clients are the men and women turning the wrenches, climbing the poles, digging the ditches. It's their management teams, the operating units. That's who we serve. And for me to serve them, I have to constantly work on my profession. I always need to be reading a book, having a podcast. I have to have a personal development plan for myself. My suggestion to every safety professional, and what I ask them if they ask me this question is, what are you doing to become a student of the profession? You have to learn it. And I don't mean learning the regulations. You need to learn the regulations. In fact, you should start learning the regulations. But from there, you need to learn leadership. You need to learn some psychology. How are you going to influence people? What makes people tick? How are you going to get these principles ingrained into our workforce? Always have a book, always have a podcast. We spend a lot of time on the road, whether it's hotels, vehicles, airplanes. You have time to be a student of the profession. Are you going to watch Netflix, or are you going to try to get better so we can protect our men and women?
What does the personal development plan look like for you?
So I always have to have a book, right? So I study leadership fairly regularly.
Is there a great book you're reading right now?
So, it's kind of funny. So right now my team reads a book. So my team reads a book together always. So we're reading The Go-Giver because Duke, on the podcast here a little bit ago, a couple of casts ago, talked about The Go-Giver. So whatever interests your boss fascinates me, right? So, but anyways, I had never read it. so I got the Go Giver and I read it myself and I was like, holy crap, why didn't Duke call and tell me to read this book?
I'm probably going to have to read it now.
he probably did tell me and I wasn't listening. But anyways, when he said it on the podcast, so I went and read the book and then I was like, I got my team together. I was like, Go Giver's our next book. We just got done reading Grit, so by Angela Duckworth. Fantastic book, especially for the trades and blue collar and people that came up like you and I, working hard, just making it happen each and every day. So I always got to have that. I think you got to figure out, depending on where you're, I'm a servant leader type of reader. So The Servant by Jim Collins, I like that book a lot. And in fact, if you come to work for me, I strongly encourage you to read it. I don't know that you can make a human do anything anymore,
Sure.
but strongly encourage it. So, but you do that. So I always have a book with me. I always have a podcast that I'm listening to, and I don't always listen to the same one, but I always bounce around different thought leaders.
Yep.
And I don't always stick to safety. I think there's some great psychology podcasts out there that you just need to challenge yourself.
Good call.
Each and every day.
Yeah.
Just to get better.
Like you mentioned leadership. So, and this goes hand in hand with that. Like, what does a good leader look like to you then?
Somebody that cares, somebody that teaches, somebody that's there for you, that'll pick you up, but also is honest with you and say, hey, you're not quite cutting it here. You got to get better here. It really gives that real feedback, not just being a nice guy.
There's this one question I wanted to ask. I'm not sure if this is the spot for it, but like, let's go for it. When it comes to the investigation process,
Mm-hmm.
and I used to wonder this question when I was in the field a lot, and I do get it a lot still from the field. Why the field level it seems like they never get to see or witness like the investigation part of an actual incident. Like whether it was a life-threatening incident or life-ending incident. I understand like there's all kinds of legal around that. But I always was kind of left feeling like I want to know about that accident and how I can prevent that from happening. And I know with an organization like this, I know it's going to get baked in then. Like we're going to see it in some way, shape or form,
Mm-hmm.
but not tomorrow. But what's your take on that? Like, why don't we get to see or get witness to that for all those people asking that question? Because I get it a lot.
So I would like to tell you we're getting better at it. Number one, I'll make this statement. We're not hiding behind our lawyers where we probably were, the industry probably was 10 years ago. We probably were 5 years ago. We've really taken a step back, and Duke, Reggie, Carl, we are going to communicate what happens, right? So when you'll see sticky communications come out from us, so we have a goal of when we have a major event, we have a text message system now that goes out, says the event happened. It gives you as much detail as I can give you within 24 to 48 hours of that event. So we're texting every Quanta phone that I can text, right? From there, we have a goal of a 3-week what we call sticky communication that will outline the event, what happened, and what lessons learned that we know currently. So we're not great at it yet, but we're continually to get better. The one thing with an organization like this, it's a large organization. I can't share every time somebody cut a finger. I can't share every time somebody twisted a knee. So we're talking about the major events, the sticky events. So you'll see us get really good, hopefully in 2024, at communicating sticky actuals, which we've talked about quite a bit here, sticky potential, and sticky success. So the sticky potential and sticky success, there was a release of energy. A sticky potential is we didn't plan for it. We got lucky, right? We dropped a pole and we did not have an exclusion zone set up. We just, luckily, no one was there. That's a sticky potential. We need to learn a lot from that, right? And then a sticky success is we dropped the pole. We had our exclusion zone set up. We planned for failure. We absorbed it without changing a life. Let's celebrate our plan for failure there.
Love that.
I'm not sure I answered your question. Besides telling you text message system, sticky communications, we're working hard at getting better.
Getting better at communicating.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's important because like that is, and I'm sure you've dealt with lots and lots and lots, but just for the people listening is like, it is a question I get tons.
Yeah.
We never get to see it. We never know what happened. What happened? It's like, it just goes through their little grapevine of like whatever somebody knows.
Yeah, totally. It's the lineman channel, right? Yeah. That's what's happening. So we also started producing incident recreation videos. I don't know if you've seen some of those. So we have maybe 10 incident recreations from our 10 most significant events of recent past. So we animate a video always between, no more than 5 minutes. We try to keep them to 3 minutes. You can watch them on your phone, and we send those out to everybody. And not only do we send them to Quanta, I send them to NECA, I send them to IBEW, and I send them to EEI. And we're really trying to share this stuff as much as we can. But no matter how hard we try, it seems like we always miss somebody.
Sure.
But we're working at it. I understand the concern, and I just tell everybody we're working hard at it.
I like that, though. I like that. Again, it's consumable.
Yeah.
When it comes down to like the smaller things, like you have a brand of hoist that's malfunctioning in some way, shape, or form.
Yep.
But it's got that potential to be an issue. Yep. How are you communicating that?
Yeah, we're really using the regional structure. As those inside of Quanta know, we really regionalize this company. So we have a regional safety lead, obviously in each region, and we're really talking to that group saying, all right, here's the problem. We need to find out if you have that hoist in your region. If you do, here's the solution or the fix, or, send the hoist back, or whatever that action plan is. And then we're really taking from that regional lead down to the operating unit, operating company lead, and driving it down that way.
This industry is notoriously hard on mental health.
Yeah.
What are some steps towards bettering that for the people, our people?
Well, it comes back to having a caring organization and caring for the people that are standing next to you, and really becoming a family. And this is me personally talking about this. Like, I need to know the people that work with me, and they need to know me, and we need to have a culture that's okay to ask questions. Are you doing all right? How's it going? Doug Dixon. Doug is a good friend of mine from the industry. I've got to know him quite well over the last couple of years. Doug calls and checks on me, right? He doesn't have to. He calls and checks on me. Are you doing all right? How's it going? Anything I can help you with? It just means a lot. Who are you calling to check on? That's my question, right? And I don't mean you, but to our listeners out there, you should have 2 or 3, in my opinion, you should have 2 or 3 names that are in your work group, that are in your network. Call and check on them. That's what we got to do. Now, on a broader approach, Quanta's focused on, what are we going to do as an organization to promote some of this? We have some things that we'll hopefully announce here pretty soon of how we're going to bring a real mental wellness program into Quanta, one that is working in construction today that we can deploy across Quanta Services. So we're focused on it. We're working hard. We're just not quite ready to talk about that program. But my challenge to everybody is call somebody and check on them.
Yeah, that's amazing. I look forward to seeing that, because just this last year, 2023, we lost a lineman that I worked with in the past, and a group of guys I worked with him a lot more. But it was at work, and he took his life at work just after. And he used to work for a Quanta company, worked for a close relative of ours. And it's just like, it's out of the blue, unexpected, obviously, like most of the time it is. Yep. You just heard from everybody like it was the last person you thought would have had any struggles. Like you didn't even see it coming, and there it was. And so, I think that is important.
And there's an increase in construction worker.
That's what I was going to ask you. Like, what are you seeing? Like, are you seeing this as far as numbers? Yeah. Is this like from the recent times we've kind of just come out of? It's kind of a result of that, or is this something that's just?
Well, I won't say that a result of that. I hear a lot of people say that. I don't have knowledge that
Sure.
COVID created this. I don't know what created it, but the numbers are there.
Yeah.
I mean, we've seen it inside Quanta, but a construction industry as a whole, the percentage of fatalities or number of deaths by suicide increase each and every year, and the largest percentage jump is construction workers that are male, and we're seeing it, and we got to address it.
Is there any indicators as to why, or things people could watch out for?
Well, I think it's
inside?
behavioral change. Understanding if somebody's down, it's checking on them. Some of that stuff I said before, but there's not one indication. You know, there's substance abuse out there. There's divorce. Some of the, you know, this is a hard industry. You're traveling a lot. You're away from your family. There's a lot of isolation going on, whether, you know, you're in a man camp in Canada, northern Canada, or you're stuck at the Super 8, or you're in a fifth wheel or whatever. There's some isolation going on there, and really coming together and taking care of each other, I think, is where we need to focus right now until we get this program going.
Amazing. Yeah, it's a hard one. It's a hard one to manage. I know it rocks a lot of people.
And we gotta make sure that it's okay to talk about. So I think what you're seeing right now, and we're starting to see it, like, it's okay to talk about some now. You go back 5 years, you and I wouldn't be having this conversation right now, right?
Yeah.
We have to continue to push it. It's okay to talk about.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. You hear that, guys? Seriously. Because I put myself back in the truck, put myself back in the crew truck.
Yep.
And there was a few times where there's always those guys that are kind of always willing to talk. So, you know, like, if they're not talking, you kind of poke them a little bit more.
Yeah.
But then there was the naturally more introverted type that was usually quiet anyway, that you'd never really know if something was bothering them or if they're struggling with something. So I guess, like, it's up to us. It's just up to us, like you said, check in with those. But we got to make sure everyone's covered, though, too. You know what I mean? Don't just pick your 3 closest buddies. Like, make sure you're asking kind of everybody, even if,
your closest 3 are easy.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
Challenge yourself to get, you know, a couple layers out from that. But we have to continue having this conversation. Like, it can't just stop.
Yeah.
We got to continue making it okay. We got to continue asking questions. Just reach out to somebody.
Let's talk about training and investing in training. I know it's a big part of the Quanta organization. Yeah. How important is this? Should we be doing it more as an industry in the whole, from what you see out there?
It's foundational, right? It's foundational to our performance, whether it's safety performance or a quality product or getting production. If we're not well trained, we're not going to be successful. It's foundational to our success. And I truly believe that in every aspect of our work. It's that important to us. And we've done a lot at Quanta to invest in it, and we're going to continue to invest in it.
It's one of the most amazing things I always liked about the military, and how Quanta's tried to, like, not to toot its horn again or whatever, but like how it's really done that with places like the Lazy Q or NLC. Like, they've tried to make it as real world as possible. Like, you're never going to go train in the military in super controlled or not realistic environment. Like, you're going to live fire, you're going to go through all the exercises. They're going to put you as close to the situation as they possibly can. And that's, like, what we try to do. And I really liked that approach at Quanta that I think a lot of other places should, but there's a lot of other aspects of it that we could even do more of, not just into the bare hand energized or hot stick training, but, like, get right into, like, all these aspects of what we do and, like, drill them in real life.
Yeah. I think one of the things we're challenged with is following up post-training, right?
Sure.
So we'll go to a Lazy Q or we'll have NLC mobile instructors come in, and we'll introduce a new grounding technique, or maybe not a new technique, but your grounding training for the first time. And then we, class ends and instructors go home and the employees go to work, who's following up on day 1 to ensure we got competency? Who's following up on day 45? Right? That's where I believe our next big bite will be, to get that follow-up. And then if I went to a training class, does my supervisor have the same training that I have? Or am I bringing out a new technique that my supervisor doesn't understand and maybe doesn't support just because of lack of knowledge? And then I'm trying to institute something that I might not even have the tools for. So I think studying those type of things is really where we're going to take the next big leap in training. It's getting out to the field and that follow-up. And you could say that about any training. You can say that about CPR training or HR training you might go through, or you have knowledge at the time the class is over. How much are you retaining in 45 days?
It's almost like, that's a great point. You hear this a lot with like police officers nowadays. It's like, there's a lot of people are saying like they might spend 2% of their actual work day or work year, 2% of it training, when it should be like 80% and 20% on the field. Like it should be almost the other way. We should be training more.
I think this is, I've heard a couple of your recent podcasts where we talk about the role of journeyman and training apprentices. Mm-hmm. I think that is so important. It's what makes craft skilled labor really multiply over the years, right? But I think really having that focus on, hey, it's your duty now that you're a journeyman to train that apprentice that's coming up and make sure they really understand it. And it's journeyman excellence. It's your duty, whatever you want to call it. Like, we really need to focus there. But not only there, have those specialized trainers from Lazy Q or NLC or whatever company they're working for come out and, hey, are we really doing this? Do you really understand now that you've tried it in that field environment?
Yeah.
And it's learning back to that black line, blue line.
Yeah.
A training environment, even though we make it real, is still a training environment, right? You don't have a client there pushing you. You don't have kids in your work site, whatever might be happening. Now that you take all those stimuli coming at you, are you still applying the same principles? I think that's important.
It's 100%. It is our responsibility as journeymen to train. It's such like I love throwing this one out into social media just to see all the comments too. It's polarizing. It's 50%. Like, people say, yeah, it's our job to train the young guys, and then the other 50% are like, say they ain't worth a shit. They don't care. They like talking about the people just coming up. They don't care. They're on their phones all the time. They don't even want to be here. They're just here for the money. Like, I hear it all. So it's like, it's both sides' responsibility though. Yeah. Like, it's our responsibility as a journeyman to take people under our wing and train them. Cause that's the trades. That's craft skill labor. That's journeyman, apprentice, master relationship. Yep. Right. But then it's equally just as important for that apprentice to understand their position and be sponges, want to learn.
I think it's back to that student of the profession. Like I was talking about safety professional, right? The apprentice needs to be a student of the profession. They need the lineman and cables handbook, right? They need to be reading this every day. They need to be studying tensions and rigging and all those kind of things. But that journeyman has to pour into them. Somebody did it to them to get them to where they are, hopefully. And they got to give that back. The one thing, this whole generational conversation comes up quite a bit. Our parents said that we were lazy too. Yeah. And now we're calling the next generation lazy. Totally. Let's stop that. Yeah. And let's just come together and let's make this a great place to work.
What I love about like Gen Z is they'll call you out on their bullshit. And back in the day, you just had to accept your journeyman's bullshit.
Yeah.
Even if you thought it was bullshit or you knew it was bullshit, you had to accept it for what it was because you had no way to prove it. You had to go home and pull out an encyclopedia to find. But now Gen Z just pulls it up on their phone and goes, well, you're full of shit.
Yeah.
Tell me something I can actually Yeah, I love that.
I wonder sometimes, because of technology and training that's available, we're pouring a lot into those apprentices. And sometimes their knowledge level is pretty darn good.
Yeah.
It's okay as a journeyman saying, I don't know, let's look at that together. Let's learn together.
Sure.
I haven't done that in a while. Let's rethink through that. Let's relearn that together. I think if we build those kind of relationships instead of just putting up my, wall and saying, oh, I don't do that anymore, or whatever you might say, man, let's dive in. That's a human being. It's a heartbeat.
Yeah.
Let's help them.
Yeah.
And it's okay if you don't know.
Yeah.
We've all had to learn that in our careers. It's okay not to know everything. Let's admit it and learn it together.
And I just again, those apprentices or that level, whether they're an apprentice or not, that sort of level, just make sure you're there for the right reasons.
Yeah.
Try to stay off the phone unless it's a designated time or you're, it's job related, looking something up. Look, that phone is probably still one of the most amazing tools you can have on the job, but just try not to abuse it
at the right time.
At the right time.
Don't be texting your girlfriend. Pay attention to what they're teaching you. Absolutely. Totally. Engage.
Yeah. Engage. Be a sponge and try to learn from them. And if you just do a few of those things, that journeyman might then want to take you under his wing and go, okay, this guy's going to pay attention. He's actually going to want to learn what I'm going to have to teach him.
Yeah. And, I think the message for our apprentices is there is no limit to where you can go in this industry, right? As much work that's coming at us, as much opportunity that is within Quanta and the utilities and the industry and our competitors, whoever, there is so much opportunity. If you want it, you can go get it. But you got to want it and you got to work for it. It's not going to be handed to you. As an apprentice, be a student of the profession. Ask questions.
So many of them are what other questions do I get? So many of them are well, do I have to travel? Yes, you have to travel. Yeah. If you're signing up for the job, pretty much sign up. And if the second you're indentured as an apprentice, it's go time for 4 years. Yeah. But that's really what you have to put in is that 4 years. And then you get to make decisions after that. You get to turn the dial.
Yeah.
You're not going to be able to turn that dial for 4 years. And that dial is, can I work less? Can I work more? Can I go here? Can I choose basically that free will? It's you're going to give up basically free will for 4 years, but it's freaking worth it because it's all it is 4 years. And that's all college is, that's all anything else is. And once you do that and you get into the trade, it's freaking golden.
Yeah. You can write your own check where you want to go. You can go anywhere in the country and work if you want it.
Anywhere in the country, you can get into whatever, you can get into safety. You can get into podcasting, whatever. Right? There's so many different things you can do, but people give up too soon in that, or they're just in it for the wrong reasons.
Yeah. But you're going to travel those first 4 years. You're going to have to get after it. But as you said, it's 4 years. Get it done, learn as much as you can, and then decide where you want to go.
Yeah. Yeah. I love
it. Of course, we want you to stay at a Quanta company, of course.
I love it. What are you seeing from your perspective? Obviously, a large leadership perspective on a massive organization like Quanta. What are you seeing for the future of, call it safety, and maybe even speak for the industry as well? What are you seeing from your perspective?
So if you look at traditional lagging indicators, total recordable incident rate, or in Canada, TRIF rate, right? The industry has driven those rates down fairly low, as we have at Quanta here. You're seeing this industry kind of movement go towards what the industry calls SIF prevention, or we call, stickies, or the capacity model. But it's really foundationally understanding how people interact with the work. It's no longer come out with a new rule. I think I said this earlier to you. I hope I work the rest of my career and not write a new rule unless we introduce a new technology or a new chemical or something, right? I believe we have enough rules. What we really have to do is focus on how human beings interact in complex systems and put that capacity or those controls in place. And that's really our focus for the foreseeable future. Now, we still look at hand injuries. I expect our local safety professionals, hey, I had, 10 hand injuries in Omaha or whatever it might be. the local safety professional in Omaha should be looking at a glove program, or we got the right gloves, those kind of things. But globally, and as the industry goes, it's really where's high energy? What are we doing about it? And is that enough?
What are we seeing right now as far as like, this is called like the little things or whatever?
Yeah, we continue to see a decline. You know, we're sustaining a TRIR below 1 now for a couple of years. But we work with our hands, so you're still seeing hand injuries. We're seeing knife cuts and things of that nature. It seems like everybody in this company has a pocket knife, I think, and they pull them out and use them. And we occasionally
hand in hand with blue collar
right,
outdoorsmen.
right. So we see, if you look at number one injuries, it's our hands, but that's what it's where skin meets rebar or whatever, rubber meets the road, right? We're working with our hands. You're still seeing some soft tissue, back stuff, those kind of things.
What's some new crazy? Is there any like new crazy tech that's helping in that regards? Like say with your hands or say with soft tissue.
There's some. The glove programs have really come a long way, where you're starting to get really good protection with still getting dexterity. So you can actually, you go back 5 or 6, 10 years ago, and we could provide you a really cool glove. You're not going to hurt, but you can't work in it, right?
Yeah.
So the technology around that continues to get better. When you throw out technology and safety, took me right to lytics, our drive cams. So
talk about that.
I was going to jump on that for a second.
100%.
We have a very large fleet, obviously. We're top 5 in North America for rolling stock out there. And it is the most hazardous thing any of our employees do every day. And we're constantly driving millions of miles and moving vehicles. And so we're really focused on driver behaviors, which is really cool around, this lytic system that has that AI in it that says seatbelt, seatbelt, seatbelt. And that's what really gets me excited is, hey, it's telling me I'm distracted. It's telling me I'm falling asleep and those type of things. So I think that'll be, it's something we're focused on, and it's really important to our future success. So we think about vehicle safety. We really think about it 3 ways. It's, are we trained to drive the vehicles we're driving? How much training have we had, right? It's buying the safest truck. So what safety features can we put on a truck that might not be on there now? We're constantly looking at that and trying to get the safest truck out there. And then it's the technology for the cameras that's, really helping us change that driving behavior.
I love that we're going this direction, because it was something I always kind of, small town, small company. My father owned a small power line contracting company. We were 2 to 6 crews max.
Yep.
And it was always crazy how we would take, like, we'd buy this brand new crane truck. We'd be, saving or wanting this thing so we could do substations better, something like that. And we'd get this rig that was so expensive and we worked so hard to get. And then because the foreman had got to the level they were at, they get the pickup, obviously. And then you take the guy who just started 3 days ago, you put him in the freaking
toss him the keys,
$300,000 truck or $400,000, $500,000, whatever it costs. And so here you go.
Yeah.
And you tried to train him, but that was the times. Like, it's just, that's how we got trained, But I love this, like how we're starting to invest a little bit more in from the start.
Yeah, for sure. And it's, it's evaluating those skills. Just because you come with a CDL doesn't mean you should be driving that truck.
Sure.
So it's really trying to evaluate those skills and getting the right person in that vehicle and training them and having a ride along, putting somebody in the cab that knows what, has a little more experience and is good at this, and training that employee.
Let's get granular on the lytic system for a second, explaining what it is, because a lot of people are probably going to, if they haven't already, start rolling their eyes like, oh, big brother, we're getting watched now. We're getting,
It's anything but that.
Yeah.
I can tell you that.
Explain that a little bit.
Yeah. So it's a camera system. It's both forward facing and in cab. It's a training tool for our employees. They do the most hazardous task of driving. And we've seen history within the industry, within some of our clients, utilities out there, that are showing 60, 70% reduction in vehicle accidents when you install this system. at the core of Quanta Services is our employees. This is another tool, just like an AED, to help our men and women get home each and every night. So the system, and the cool part to me as a safety geek, it sits there, like if we don't have a seatbelt on, it'll say seatbelt, 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 right? If you're falling asleep, it'll say distracted or drowsy driving. If you pick up your phone, it's going to say distracted, distracted, right? Nobody has time to watch these videos. And you get 5 alerts before anybody knows. So 5 times you're not going to wear your seatbelt before your supervisor gets notified, right? So we're given plenty of chances. This is not a disciplinary action or a tool like that. It's to help our men and women get better. We're constantly trying to get better each and every day. Nobody comes to work to get hurt. We always say that, right? We're just helping the men and women get better each and every day.
I love that. I remember when I was in the field, and I'd get particularly the late night trouble calls. So we'd have to drive, like it's usually like middle of winter too, middle of the night. We did a very rural area, so we're driving a lot. Did a lot of driving in our buckets and diggers and pickups, and we'd always have this like check-in process. We had just the 2A radios in the trucks or whatever, and so we were constantly like blabbing back and forth, especially if the guy's driving the bucket. And it's always like the return trip home, right? The way out, you're kind of high on adrenaline. It's storm call. You're going. It's fine. You haven't done any of the work yet, but like 6 hours later, when you've been slugging through the snow and like putting up wire and all this, you get back in the bucket and you're like heading back to the yard and you have an hour and a half drive in front of you. Yep. That's when it got crazy, and it was hard. Like you were constantly like, we were every 5 minutes. Hey, how you doing? Good. Getting a bit tired, whatever. Just got the radio up, got the window down, whatever you could do. But like, that's nice to have that. Like if you don't have that sort of that thing, it's like it's like that person on your shoulder, right? Yeah. Like, hey, no, that's awesome. Because,
that's a great process.
Because not everyone's like that, or like most things are like cell phones now too, right?
Yeah.
You don't even have 2-way radios in probably 95% of the fleet out here. This is rural Canada we're talking about. And that's the only communication we had was these radios. But if you don't have them, you're not phoning the guy every 5 minutes. Yeah. So that's a really great tool to have there and available. Like, I don't know. It'd make me feel a little more comfortable knowing that I got somebody watching in case I'm getting tired, saying, hey.
And it's a tool to help us get better. Like I want every person at this company and the industries we serve to return home each and every night. That's what we're here for, right? This will help us do that. It will.
I like as well because it kind of protects. It seems like it might protect the operator for things that happen external of their fault, even, like somebody's driving crazy and then claims that you went into their lane when in fact you didn't. Now it's all, on camera.
Yeah. This is the early days of implementation of these cameras. And we've already seen several of those where if we didn't have the video, whose fault was it? Right. And one in particular, we were able to show the police officer and the other car, they were going to cite us, and the other driver actually got cited.
See?
So it protects us in a lot of ways.
I've heard in another interview that you did, you talked about when you first brought up the capacity model.
Yeah.
It was a bit confrontational or heated, or just not, I don't know if it was confrontational, but like it was a difficult thing to do, is like convincing leadership of something. What's your advice for going through that process? If there's somebody out there that has an idea or has something that they want to bring up with leadership, whatever level of leadership that is, it could be like apprentice to journeyman to supervisor, whatever. What's your advice for going through that process?
Do your homework first. Really have something set in stone and a vision of where you want to go, and practice articulating your message. You might only get this shot one time, right? So when I took this to Duke for the first time, I really had a vision. I had been working on it for a year, up to a year maybe, and really had a vision for where we wanted to go. And I had the facts behind of how we were going to deploy it. It wasn't just a idea. It was a solution. It was a systematic approach to how we were going to do it across Quanta. So not just throwing an idea out there, but really starting with him to get that senior level buy-in, and then work your way down from there. One of the things that we did with the capacity model, so we had C-suite buy-in. I mean, Duke's obviously passionate about men and women, right? We rolled out sticky to the field, and it spread rather quickly because it's consumable. And then we left this whole middle management team. We did a couple webinars, but we really never really talked to them about how they got to show up differently. So that's it probably cost us a year in our integration because we didn't spend enough time there. From a confrontational standpoint, saying the word failure is hard for us, right? We're big ego construction men and women. Sure. Don't tell me I'm going to fail. But yet we fail every day. So getting them to think, and we tell the stories that, we have 58,000 employees, and every one of them has a heartbeat. Every one of them's human. And all of us have one thing in common. We're fallible. We're going to screw it up at some point. So when you start getting that mindset shift, oh yeah, we do screw up. Okay, well, if you screw up and high energy is present, we want to be able to absorb that. So it's having a really good message, having a good vision, not just throwing crazy ideas out.
What do you see as far as this? This just popped something else in my head. Conflict and conflict resolution. Do you see anything out there with like the story that would pop in my head is like a member of the public getting angry at you for shutting the power off for whatever reason. Storm, you got to turn the power off. Like there's a conflict there and resolving that conflict. Do you do any sort of training on conflict resolution or have any opinion on that?
I have opinions. Sure. They're a client of our client. We need to be extremely professional. We need to talk to them, offer respect. You're representing Quanta Services. You're representing your OpCo. You're representing the local utility. I feel like you're representing me and you as that lineman out there interacting with that person. So understand that they just lost power. They might have been in the middle of dinner. They might have, trying to get babies to sleep or whatever. There's issues there. Be sensitive to that and get the right people involved in that conversation. When you ask, do we do training to that? We don't really do training to that. Some of our clients put us through training. They'll have training for our employees out there. But it's a great point that maybe we should look at that.
What's 2024 look like? What are we doing? What are you doing? Yeah. What are you looking towards?
So corporately, we're working on two things: driver safety and the integration of the capacity model. We've been at the capacity model now for 5 years. It's not where we need to be. We're constantly working on it. We should call it integrating into operations. It's how we plan, execute, and learn from work. And sometimes we're doing it really well, and sometimes we still got some gaps. So nothing new is coming out from here. And then it's working on vehicle safety.
Get specific then, like what are some of the hows? Like how are we working on getting that out there a little bit better? Like
we really need fluency at all levels. So I need the president to understand capacity model just as well as my frontline leader. And as the president goes out there or a project manager goes out there, the first thing they're talking about is sticky or capacity related conversations. So they can see it's really driving how our work is. We need to be talking about controls. So if you look at the integration of the capacity model, most of Quanta companies in 2024 will be identifying critical tasks. And I call those the tasks that keep you up at night as a president. And that's not a dozen, but it's 3 or 4 things that keep you up at night. And it's going through a process. We call it a visual tool analysis. Some call it a bow tie analysis, where you talk about the unwanted event, electrical contact. On the left side of this bow tie, what are you doing to prevent an electrical contact? You go through that paradigm shift. It's not if, it's when we have an electrical contact. When that happens, what's going to protect me and my crew? So that's the capacity part of the controls part. So most of Quanta will be going through that in 2024, identifying those three or four things locally and really getting rigid about those controls.
What can the the foreman, supervisor performing the tailgate, tailboard, whatever meetings, pre-job meetings, what does that person need to be thinking about? What kind of questions do they need to be asking?
Yeah.
How do they get better at implementing this or helping implement?
Yeah. So the tailboards and the job briefings, I could get on a rant here. I'll try not to, but
no, please.
So the safety professionals profession has, in my opinion, almost ruined the job briefing process. So and I was part of this. I did this 20 years of my career. Post event, the first thing we do is give me the job briefing. You read the job briefing and you didn't check box 12. This box is empty, and you didn't write down the trip hazards that were over there around the tree. Here's, a written warning or 3 days off or yelled at or whatever, right? So because we drove that process, we're now seeing job briefings that could be 3 and 5, even 7 pages long. Now, I don't know about you. Like, I'm a safety geek. I said that earlier. Like, I'm passionate about this stuff. When I sit in a job briefing and you get to page 2, I'm texting my wife. Like, how's it going with the kids this morning? What do you think our apprentices are doing?
Yeah.
Right. Now, there's certain things we got to do. We need hospital locations. We need clearance numbers. We need some of that stuff. What I ask everybody to do is, right before we go to work, let's have a real rich conversation about what's sticky here. Let's have that sticky discussion and make sure we get those questions right. That's what I want to see in that job briefing process. It's not about how good the forms filled out. A lot of times today, I feel like those forms are being filled out for the safety professional, the client, the supervisor that shows up, because they're going to evaluate them. How many words did you write? I want a rich discussion, right? And you don't know if there's a rich discussion. I've seen really poor documented tailboards that were really good. And I've seen really good documented tailboards that had no discussion, right? That's not what we're looking for. We want a balance there. Like, get the stuff you got to have on there, and then let's have a sticky discussion.
I love that. It's so true. That supervisor, foreman has to provide an environment where people are okay or feel okay to actually ask a question or say something at all levels. And when you are asking a question, or responding, make sure it's valid. Make sure it's like, there's a time to joke. Everyone loves to laugh. Maybe that's not the best time to laugh about something or bring up some stupid or be sarcastic or whatever. Maybe that is the time to actually get serious for just 5 minutes and talk about the shit that can kill you.
Yeah, that's right.
That's all that's all you need to do.
Let's have that discussion. I remember, I'll go back 20 years ago, one of the first job briefings I ever attended in this industry. It was in South Texas. It was on a cool morning, even in South Texas. It got kind of cool that morning. And I pulled up, and this foreman, he's passed away now. He's around the business a long time. He had a job briefing, and he was a heavy smoker, and he was in his truck with his windows up, just ripping cigarettes, And his crew's standing outside the driver's side door, waiting for him to deliver the job briefing. And I'm standing there too. At the time, I was the client. I was working for the utility. And this foreman, he cracks his window, doesn't even roll it all the way down, slides the job briefing out and says, y'all sign that and be safe now. So we go from there, right? So this was 20 years ago, to now 7 pages of babble that I'm not sure we're listening to.
Yeah.
So we got to bring it back and have that focused conversation.
Yeah. And it's not just all about the slips, trips, and falls. It's
no.
about a lot more. What else can we be doing at any level? What can we be doing to help bring this message, implement? Is there anything else, any level?
Yeah. I think ask good questions. I'm going to talk about instant investigations again just for a second. Yeah. It's really easy post-event to blame an employee. The employee, bad choice, poor behavior, that employee did something boneheaded or stupid or whatever. And it makes us feel good because I can place blame, I can discipline the employee, and I can come back to the office and say, fix that problem, right? We got to get better at asking questions. that's where our learnings really have to start. Like, what allowed that employee to make that decision? What culture have out there that allows that to go on? Why didn't we have the right tool? Is there a barrier there? What systems? We're really trying to find system failures instead of just blaming the employees. Now, do we have poor employees that need discipline? Absolutely. We need to identify those and get it out. But large majority, we have really, really good employees out there trying to do the right thing. When that event happens, I really want us to get really good at asking questions, right? I want us to get really good at asking questions during the job briefing process. What could go wrong? Let's plan for failure. Like every day, let's understand if this goes wrong, what are we doing about it? And let's build that capacity. And I think, I said this earlier, but fluency at all levels. We need everybody to understand this direction, our philosophy we're going with high energy hazards and how we're going to control them.
Do you think that we need to better understand like what some of these high energy situations may or may not be? I just like think about some of the job sites I get on. I'm like, I don't know. Do I write that down again? Like, is that the only thing that could be the thing that hurts you?
Yeah. So a couple things. As soon as everything becomes sticky, nothing's sticky.
Sure.
So that's not what if this thing. Like if I get a splinter and then it gets infected and then the treatment doesn't work and then we have to amputate. Let's not do that, right? The other part of identifying energy is we're really well trained. We talked about our investment in training. We have really well trained employees out there. And there's some risk tolerance that comes with that, I think. And there's risk tolerance that comes with experience. Understanding that we still need to talk about that every day is hard. That's why we try to make it consumable with a sticky discussion, right? We're not asking you to create something new every day. Let's understand we're human beings. We're going to mess it up. Yeah. If high energy is present, what are we doing about it? And if we get that right, I mean, that's really my challenge to everybody is. And it's hard day in and day out. You're working the same line. It's almost like an assembly line sometimes out there. Force us to have those high energy discussions each and every day.
You say we need to get better at asking questions. Love that. I put that practice into my life, especially when I became a podcaster. I started actually listening to podcasts a lot from the other perspective. So I would start listening to the person asking the questions and listening to studying. I've always been a student of whatever I've tried to do, right?
Yeah.
Same as you talk about. I've always done that. So if I'm going to do this for a living, I want to study the people who do this well.
Yep.
Read a couple books. One of the books was How to Talk to Anyone, Anytime, Anywhere. I pump this book all the time. It's written by Larry King, the master communicator, right? Larry King. Small, easily digestible, easily consumable book that anybody can read. If I read it, anybody can. How to Talk to Anyone, Anytime, Anywhere. That really helped me, but then started listening from the other point on podcasts, right? Studying the way podcasters were asking questions. What questions were they asking? How do they pull those threads to actually get something meaningful out of the conversation? You can apply that. And I have applied that to regular conversation in life. Yeah. Like at the dinner table, like wherever, just digging a little further into it. But then the flip side of that is you either need to know your shit, being that other person that's going to answer that question. You need to know your stuff, or don't fake it. Yeah. And park the ego for a second and be willing to go, I don't know. Hold on. Like I don't have the answer right now, but you know what? I'm going to find out what this is. So, hold off what you're doing, or I'll get back to you, or whatever that is, but park the truck, park the ego and figure it out.
But that's hard to do sometimes.
It's hard to do, and it's not being done enough.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, you have to be able to make that call. Hey, I'm going to stop because I don't know the right answer here. Yeah. This is not the time to guess. Yeah. Yeah. It's tough.
Because I think what happens a lot of time is that person knows it too, and they don't stop what's happening. There's probably more times than none where that person or that individual could have the opportunity to stop work, but instead they just kind of like let it go
Yeah.
to see what happens. And 99% of the time it'll work out.
That's right.
And that 1% is an incident.
Yeah.
Yeah. You need to park it.
Yeah.
Park the truck.
Park the truck. I like
Park the freaking truck. Couple more questions for you. What are you looking for? What kind of person are you looking for when it comes to a safety rep? We talked a little bit about professionalism and that sort of, but what specifically, are you looking for in a safety representative or in a safety professional in our industry?
Yeah. So you got to be a leader. You got to be able to articulate your message. Being a leader, you have to be able to influence people. You can't be arrogant. You got to have a passion for people and taking care of people. This business, safety professional, is all about taking care of people. And if you don't see that, if you're not working towards that, if you're not trying to get better at that, you're probably not going to be a good fit here.
If you could go back and tell yourself, your 18-year-old self, anything, give some advice to 18-year-old Matt. I know you jumped right into it at like 20. It was just crazy.
Yeah, it was crazy.
But what advice would you give that 20-year-old? Knowing what you know now, or knowing the direction, knowing the decisions you could have made, what would you tell them?
Yeah, I think slow down a little bit. We talked about asking questions. And then I study leadership now. I got a personal development plan. We talked about all that stuff. Doing that earlier, I think is really important. I don't, not proud of this. I was probably in my mid-20s before I read my first complete book, but understanding that you have to get better and investing in yourself, that it's more than just coming to work. This isn't just a job, right? This safety professional is not a job. It's a passion, and I would tell you it's more of a calling for me. Like, this is what I have to do, and if I'm going to be good at it, I got to invest in myself. While I think I do that fairly well now, I didn't do that fairly well in my early career.
Yeah. Love that. Patience is that's definitely one of the things I'd do. That's what I tell myself as well.
Yeah.
It's just it's a long, it's a short life, but it's a long life in the same way. Like, you got time. Everyone always says, you don't have time to do this, you don't get time to do that, but you kind of do.
Yeah.
And especially if you want to get better and you want to implement a few things and you want to be at a certain level, just work it into your routine. And it only takes a handful of things every year that you're learning or implementing, and you're going to make yourself way more valuable in the future.
Totally. We have a saying in our integration plans is to go fast, you got to go slow.
Yeah.
And I think this applies here. Like, really 100%. Work on yourself. Go slow at first. Learn your trade, learn your profession. And as soon as it starts to click, it multiplies.
Yeah. One more. The trade's notoriously as well hard on families and family life. And we talked a bit about mental health. And what's some things you do to keep family together, work cohesively, communicate?
Well, one, I have an amazing wife that puts up with this crazy life of mine. I'm gone a lot, much like our tradespeople are. Call home, send text, be present when you're home. Something I got to work on. We talked about the phones earlier. It's one thing to go home and you just work a 12-hour day, and then you go home, and as soon as you sit down, you pick up your phone and you start answering emails again and some of that. And you got to do that sometimes, and we all do it. But when you're at the dinner table, be present. When you're in front of your family, be present. I got to work on that for sure. It's tough, but you got to actively work on it. You got to recognize it, and you got to be actively working on it. Just sending a text that says I love you once a day, and that ain't enough. Yeah. And some days I'm better than others, but I got to work on it.
Love that. Matt, thanks.
No, thank you. This was fun.
All right, guys, once again, hope you got some value out of the episode. I know I did. I enjoy every single one of these conversations, and I hope you enjoyed listening to it. One more time for the folks in the back, if you could subscribe, follow, make sure you're following either in audio form and video form on YouTube. Much appreciated. All right, guys, play safe. Peace.